Welcome to the latest episode of the Wellbeing Show. I've got Alan Johnson with us, who's going to introduce himself in a second, but he's written a very interesting book about overthinking for people who are psychologically astute as well. We had a brief chat just before the show, just to talk about that. There is something about how we're being a little bit over psychologized at the moment, and so it's a timely chat. You might think odd for somebody like me, a psychotherapist, to say that, but to be honest, folks, I think the whole point about therapy is to get on with your life and forget about therapy, really, if I'm honest with you.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, I'm wondering how useful it is. But enough of that. Just to remind you, as it looks live, but it's not. It's pre-recorded. Do send me messages on WhatsApp, 07506 319 745. But don't call because I'll be out doing something else and you won't get a nice reception from me. You'll get a grumpy old man, is what you'll get. You don't want that. So do something messages, and I'm sure Alan towards the end will give some contact details for him as well, so that you can reach out to him. Hope you enjoyed. Looking forward to the chat. Welcome, Alan. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. Good to meet you. Good to
Good to
speak to
meet
you.
you. Where are you based?
I'm based in North Allerton in North Yorkshire.
Great.
Uh, so I'm originally from a little further north in County Durham, in a little town called Shildon,
Yeah.
where the first ever passenger railway ran exactly 200 years ago this week.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. So I'm
That's extraordinary.
from up
I'm from the
north.
Black Country, so I know about
Yeah,
railways and industrial revolutions and stuff like that. It's very
yeah.
important part of my culture, really.
Heart of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you're born and brought up in the Northeast, and so tell us about sort of, what was it like growing up there during that time?
Yeah, so I grew up in the was born in '66 and grew up in the '70s and '80s in a working class town that became very depressed in the '80s when the railway works closed. It was quite a very low expectation culture in the where I was growing up. But I always thought this kind of it wasn't ever for me anyway. This kind of work there's nothing on my hands. They're very smooth. Like most of my peers were going to go and work in the industry. I always knew I'd be working with people in some way. So yeah, it was good growing up through rose-tinted glasses, which I talk about. Everything nostalgia isn't what it used to be, is it? And the summer holidays were amazing for 6 weeks, and we went
Yeah,
out in the morning and came back when we were hungry. And I don't want to sound like an old fart because I am an old fart now, but I don't want to eulogize
good
about that.
company, don't worry.
The history seems good in retrospect. But in reality, it was probably pretty basic, and I think we're quite happy with not very much in those days, and there wasn't the comparisons we've got now. I think the lot of the things that have changed over the last 30 years certainly
Hmm,
is the ability to compare ourselves to people
hmm.
instead of just being happy with whoever and whatever we are.
Yeah,
So
compare and despair, as they say.
absolutely, the thief of joy.
So when you say we, was that because you had siblings or were you only
I've got a
child?
younger brother, Dave. He is a manager of a big hotel. He's worked in the hotel industry for many years.
Hmm.
And in a way, quite opposite to me. He's worked at the same employer since he was 17, and he's 55. Well, according to Facebook, he's 48, but he's actually 55.
Okay.
Um, and he's very steady, whereas I left school, went to sixth form, decided not to complete my studies, and became
Yeah.
a nurse. And from there changed. So I was a general nurse, didn't really like the attitude, the system. I've always been a bit of a kind of system breaker, if you like. Moved into
Change
mental.
agent, as they might say these days.
Yes, change agitator, definitely. But in those days, it was still quite carry on matron. So it was, yeah,
Yes. No, actually, I do remember because I helped close down a few hospitals, and
yeah,
there were some people we were encouraging people to get out of the uniform, but there were some people that had that uniform starched in their soul. Do you know what I mean? It's like
yeah.
whatever. So I
It
totally
was.
get it. It
Yeah,
was
I mean, I started in 1985 as a nurse 40 years ago. And there were some people there who'd been there since the war, the beginning of the NHS. It was still very Nightingale ward and very hierarchical. And I've never liked hierarchy. I've been a very senior manager in my
Did
time,
you
but
want to be a nurse while you were at school? Was it a sort of, I mean, it's
no, I
unusual
was,
as a guy to be
yeah,
a nurse, particularly in your generation. I mean, it was sort of you would have been the only bloke, actually, I imagine.
There were two of us in the
Right.
group I was in. There was maybe 1 in 10 nurses then were men, and
Yeah.
it's there
Even
was
now,
quite
when we say the word nurse, people assume woman, which is
yeah.
not true. Yeah.
No, and I think nowadays, as you say, it's much more accepted that it's more mixed. But definitely, yeah, and I experienced a lot of sexism. To be fair, where
Yeah.
it was very much
But did you know, was it a calling for you? Did you think you were at school thinking,
no, no.
I want to be a nurse? I mean, I'm sort of,
I'd love to say that, but no, it was a reaction away from shit. I can't finish my A levels. What am I going to do? Um, and my mum was a nurse, but I've always been
yeah.
a sensitive guy. My
Yeah.
friends were
Yeah.
all.
Yeah.
I've knocked about with the girls. I was friends with all the girls more than the boys. I wasn't very macho. I'm still not.
Yeah.
Um,
Same
and
with a lot of us, mate. I mean,
yeah,
like, I'm
and
of the same generation. We had fewer options not to be.
yeah,
And these days, I think young men have more options, which is fantastic. I mean, it's
yeah,
brilliant. I
yeah,
can't, I can't tell you how exciting it is to see that. Do you know what I mean? The choices that guys can make these days, and some
absolutely.
are making really bad ones, and I despair of some of the manner
Yeah.
and nonsense. Do you know what I mean? That reactionary
And
crap.
that's it. I mean, the plasticity of the brain at that age, where you've got influences like Tate and other people who um, are feeding into the hormones that the
Yeah,
guys have got at
it's
that age.
revolting. It's
Yeah,
revolting.
it,
Yeah.
it's it's yeah. I really despair at some of that. And talking about younger, newer generations, psychological awareness is really high, but resilience is really low. And it's
Yes, it's interesting. That's a really nails it. That's a really interesting. We'll get into that more. I want to get
yeah,
back to your story though.
yeah,
It's quite interesting.
yeah. So
So you were a sensitive guy out of time, as it were.
yeah.
You had the model you had for dealing with that and caring for people. I guess that's what you're saying. You had a
Yeah,
sentiment.
my mum was a
Yeah.
nurse, very dedicated nurse. Both my parents grew up in villages,
Okay.
and they'd moved to the town I was in. So I was actually quite naive young child. I had quite sort of village where there were very close-knit communities to this town. I think I was a bit out of place there as well. I've always felt a little bit in fact, I've always felt a bit outside of things, a bit of an
Right.
outlier, which was a problem to me in the younger years. But as an adult, I embraced it. In fact, as a teen, I embraced it. But I got bullied quite badly at school. And that one another reason I became really sensitive. Because I was sensitive, overweight, and very bright.
Yeah.
I was an easy target in a working class town. And I think that a lot of the stuff that I do as an adult is being shaped by early recognition of reaction to people's
Yeah.
behavior,
Yeah.
strategies for coping with emotional stuff, and just I think I matured emotionally before my time.
And
Uh,
what form did the bullying take? Was it sort of sitting
Physical
down?
and emotional, psychological,
Right.
and I was really I wrote a book many years ago about bullying and
Yeah.
how to because my daughter was struggling with it, my stepdaughter was struggling with it, and learning the stuff I learned, I showed some strategies now. So my wife works with young teenagers and
Yeah.
children. A lot of them are being bullied. She shows them the strategies of how to be less bullyable. And if someone had taught me that when I was 4 or 5, going into school,
Yeah.
brought up in a household where it was all about care and, walked into a school and was green as grass, I didn't know what to do. I thought, why are these people not being nice to me?
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that shaped a lot of my career choices because having had that bullying all the way through school, at sixth form, I reinvented myself. And then when I was in the workplace, it was kind of, I did get some sexist bullying from early, sort of when I was a student nurse.
Yeah.
Um, but as an adult, I kind of sought out places to work. So I left general nursing into mental health nursing, worked in the locked mental health unit where people were sporadic, very spontaneously aggressive
Yeah.
because of the mental wellness. But then also went to work in prisons, and I've worked in drug and alcohol services, probation service. I put myself around the characters that were bullying me as a
Put
kid
yourself in harm's way, mate. You
to understand them, and actually my empathy because I'm massively empathic.
Mm.
Um, I've still got love and empathy for the people who are the type of person that did me harm as a child, so that I want to help the children who are sensitive like me, so they don't feel that level of
It's interesting
aggression.
because there are sort of, I mean, I mean, this is very overly simplistic and
Yes,
push back, but there are a couple of choices you've got when you're going through those early childhood adverse experiences. One is to try and join the gang and become the bully. The other is to try and deal with healing
Yeah.
and wanting to change things. And you chose wanting to change and heal. In retrospect, do you know why you chose that rather than you went in to join the gang and become the bully?
I just think again, I think it's emotional maturity plus the values of, well, it's not right. Um,
Where did you get that from?
from my parents, I think very much.
Right.
Um, my dad was hit the biggest one, hit the biggest one. They won't come back, but I was too frightened to do that.
Yeah.
But my mum was all about kindness and be turn the other cheek kind of stuff, which doesn't work, of course. But it's the I think what I've learned over the years and what I'm teaching people in my teachings and my book is some people are very, very strategic, and I just wasn't.
Yeah.
I was naive. And some people are unaware of how strategic some people are about getting what they want.
Yeah.
And they can
Yeah.
become victims of those people if they're not careful. So
Yeah.
talk about drama triangle, being a rescuer, being an ex-rescuer myself,
Sure.
um, how to set strong boundaries, how to be assertive, how to not take other people's shit and know where your edge is. And I didn't have an edge.
And is this the book about bullying or the current book?
So this is the current book about
Right.
bound. It's about it's there's a lot of stuff about boundary setting, about accepting who you are, about um, authenticity over
Okay.
over anything else really. And
Well, we're going to come to that a bit
into
later.
that, yeah,
I'm going to carry on the narrative with your story because it's a fascinating story. There's lots of echoes of mine. I worked in forensics, locked wards, etc., as a therapist. I worked with sex offenders, which garnered a lot of side eye at the time. But as I was trying to explain to people at the time, sex offenders are very difficult to treat, and I'm going to make that very clear. They're dangerous people, and probably need exclusion much more than any patient group I've ever worked with. Very rarely do they get to a
yeah,
point where they're safe. But with a lot of the more broader, violent, antisocial population, you can work with them and you
yeah,
can make them more sociable and more safe. And that was the point of the work, was not to forgive people, but to reduce the number of victims that were going to come from these very dangerous people. Um, but
yeah.
as your experience would have told you, a lot of, particularly in prisons, which is mostly men and mostly men with two or more identified mental health problems, we were talking about incredibly vulnerable people that were acting out in very antisocial and dangerous ways. You're
Yeah.
nodding away there, right?
And that's before the trauma informed badge was existing.
Exactly. Yeah.
It is about what's happened to these people. And I've always thought what's happened in that person's life for them to be able to be like that. What's true for them, that's okay, whatever it is they're doing.
Yeah.
And understanding the mind. So I work with sex offenders. I've worked with, a lot of people with some behaviors that other people just wouldn't be able. How can you work with those people?
Yeah.
Well, what's the alternative? This,
I
this
mean,
person,
yeah, you're talking to the converted here. I do
yeah,
ask that question. We've run out of space in prisons. I mean, we have to do something about it, you know.
yeah.
It's that sort of, we've just extended prison sentences and blocked it all up, and it's nonsense. It never works. So,
Because behavior is just the output, and if
yeah,
we're just judging people on behavior, and anyone who isn't following the narrow narrative politically, that will lock the person up. Or what about the people who've got to look after those people? Um,
well, there's always a
and
victim. It's either the professional or a member of the public. And
these,
people just don't get that, do they? It's like,
no, and most people are going to be released at some point. So you want,
yeah,
ideally, some people are not interested in that, but a lot of people in prison just don't know how. I believe don't know how to be a citizen.
I,
Um,
I agree. That's my
and
experience. I mean, I had the current head of Grendon on a few months back. You know, Grendon, it's world famous now. Grendon, for people who don't know, it's a therapeutic prison. The only one in the UK at the moment. There used to be a couple of them, but it is
yeah,
the only one left.
yeah,
And somehow it survived. And, talking to the professionals who work in Grendon, they're really grounded people. They're in no sense are they tree hugging liberals at all. Like,
no,
but they are very clear-minded about they want to support these men mostly in getting their lives back on track because fewer people will be victims by the end of that process. And if you don't,
They're just the traumatized children acting out as adults.
exactly.
And trauma, I've done a lot of work with trauma. So I work with a veterans charity with post-traumatic stress. And I
Right.
was in a film recently that's just on cinema release at the moment about recovery from post-traumatic stress.
Okay.
Um,
What's the film?
it's called Love and Trouble. It's still in the cinema. It's available to stream, and apart from in the UK at the moment. It will be in the UK next year. It's
So is
just
it in cinemas in the UK, in
it's
independent
in
ones,
it's
is it?
on limited release. I think it's still doing its premieres, if you like. It's going around the country.
Right.
But there's two people in there who have been my students, but also I've coached them, done therapy with them, which is in the film, so I'm okay to say this. And it just shows how the approaches I use can, it sounds a bit too simplified, but switches off the PTS, so it makes it much more manageable.
Yeah.
Uh, and
Yeah.
it shows their lives from he had it was about his childhood really, but he saw something on the battlefield, and that made his PTS really, really bad.
Yeah.
Uh, and then she admitted about her childhood sexual abuse in the film. So they both met with the trauma bond, and it's how they've come through that. It followed them for 10 years, and
Wow.
it's a lovely story for anyone who's
Wow.
interested in
Yeah.
therapeutic
Well, we'll
change.
make sure we put a link in it so people can
Yeah,
follow up on it. So coming back, you choose to go into nursing. You find out that that point in time, so the general nursing isn't for you.
yeah,
I mean, I would say if you're thinking of going into nursing training now, it has very much changed since the time
it's
Alan
absolutely
taught me that.
changed. Yeah,
Like these days, as a nurse, you're a very highly regarded professional
yeah.
and you have postgraduate qualifications. You have a lot of power and choice and a lot of respect on the wards. It's no longer, ooh, matron tall. It's nothing like that whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah. But
This is way back in time when dinosaurs still roamed the
it
earth.
was very, very much, yeah, 40 years ago.
Alan and I are one of the few sets of dinosaurs that survived from the meteor strike. So what we're talking about is a long time ago. It doesn't exist anymore.
It doesn't.
But you decide then to go into psychiatric nursing or mental health nursing, which what
Yes.
would you prefer to call it?
I'd just say mental health nursing now. It was psychiatric nursing then, but I
Yeah,
think mental health probably is a better word for it. But I did a postgrad in those days. It was 3.5 years to be a general nurse, and a year and a half to become a mental health nurse, a
yeah,
psychiatric nurse. And I trained in a big old Victorian mental hospital called Winterton in County Durham.
yeah. Well known.
Just as Ken, the community was coming in.
Yeah.
So as a post-reg
So
student,
while you were doing that, I was helping close the hospitals under care in the community. So that was where our paths diverged, if you like.
yeah, well,
Pretty interesting.
as a post-reg student, I'd worked for a couple of years as a general nurse. Um, when I finished my post-reg student training,
Yeah,
the hospital was closing, so there weren't any
yeah,
permanent positions. I took a brief position in child and adolescent mental health,
yeah.
and then completely changed track and became a salesman. Yeah, I
I
was,
mean, in a sense, I can see the connection. You know, we are
yeah,
selling something to people who are a bit resistant towards it. So yeah,
yeah. So my petulance again, my away from that got me into nursing, got me out of it. And I'd already started selling financial products part
okay,
time, which you could then.
yeah,
It was a really bad move. It was commission only and didn't make any money. So went into medical sales. So I combined the two, and I sold products for a couple of years, but
yeah,
absolutely hated it. I
yeah,
was good at it, made a lot of money, but didn't at that time. I liked team, and it was just so isolating. So
yeah,
went back into nursing as a prison manager, nurse manager. Again, as they were converting from hospital officers, as they used to be then. It was a bullying experience again. They didn't prepare them for nurses coming in,
yeah.
resented us coming in. Behaviors in prisons can reflect the
Because
client group.
in those days, if I remember rightly, medical services within the prison service weren't necessarily provided by the NHS. You
They
weren't
weren't.
managed or part of the NHS, were you?
I was brought in as the start of the NHS,
Was it? Okay,
um, or
right.
NHS parallel. So the hospital officer was an officer who'd done a month or two straight, not a lot of training to dish out aspirin and do
Yeah.
some basic triaging effectively.
Yeah.
And the services weren't always amazing. And we used to have a GP came in once a day. That was the
Yeah.
doctor. But we were in a change management process, and it wasn't handled very well, as it tends
Yeah.
not to be. Communication was poor. Again, it was a very again bullying. Reminding me, I hadn't sorted my bullying out at that point. And that's when I got really quite depressed. So I had my own mental health stuff going on, because of aggression. It was actually outright aggression.
Yeah.
And I didn't have the strategies to cope with it. I wasn't streetwise enough for it. So yeah, I became quite unwell, and that's what set me on the journey that's got me to where I am, really. So the
Okay.
rest was in the background. It was all, everything makes sense. The strands all come together. But it was actually that my own mental unwellness that made me go out and seek something different to the medical model.
Right. And then what did you seek and what did you get?
So I was offered medication. I went to my GP, and I've obviously working in that field. I've seen the limitations, and now I think the recent years of limitations of medication on its own. And I thought, well, if it works, it's going to take a couple of months, and then I'm going to be vulnerable going forward unless I change me. And I thought, I'm the problem here. I'm the one who can't cope with.
Wow, I mean, that's really impressive to get that insight when you're that low, because you've had repetitive experiences of people being unpleasant to you.
Yeah,
It would be very easy to sort of just give up at that point and say, I've done.
it would have, and I'm oversimplifying the process.
Yeah, of course.
And
Yeah,
it wasn't a straight line, but actually thought, well, unless I'm different in the way that I experience the world, I will be vulnerable to my low mood the rest of my life.
great.
And it didn't go away instantly, but it's something that took a few
But as
years.
you're reflecting it, you're not presenting it as though you were beating yourself up. It was like you
No,
you developed this insight about, well, I need to develop a bit more new skills and new resilience. I need to deal with this because it keeps confronting me.
yes, and the medical model at the time, there was no talking therapies. There was,
Yeah.
I've always been, I was a natural therapist. So people
Okay.
would talk to me. I would help people without knowing what I was doing. Really, I wasn't trained other than being a mental health nurse, which I found the training was very at that time was very lacking
Mind if
in.
I interject something there? Because
Yeah,
as a therapist, as a professional, I mean, I think it's important to say this that there wasn't much of an alternative anyway. That psychological talking therapies were pretty rubbish. They were locked in a model that didn't have an evidence base, were limited in its applicability, and even less applicable now. So the range of tools and resources that we've got, EMDR, CBT, etc., just didn't yet exist anyway. I mean, they were there, but they weren't being promoted
they
properly.
weren't being they weren't accessible.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
counselling wasn't really recognised at that point.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so there wasn't much alternative, and the GPs and the other prescribers didn't really have much else to give but prescription,
Yeah.
or incarceration. That's pretty much all they had at that time.
Yeah.
Um, and I thought, well, I've got to take some ownership of this.
Great.
And I went looking in lots of different places. So I did counselling. It was the first place I went.
Yeah.
Liked the attitude, but found it very passive and very, I'm reflecting now with 20 years, 30 years experience in front of it. But even then I thought, I'm asking the person what they think. Well, surely the way they think's got them into the problem in the first place. So that's not going to help. And it was just a bit wet for me. It was just
Yeah.
really kind of modeled on the person that created it, whose name I've just forgotten.
The
Um,
person-centered approach and
yeah,
all that
it,
sort of
it
stuff,
was this,
which is
it was this,
fine. But I find have the same emotional response myself. I want some tools and resources. Once you explain something, I want to try things out. That's where I'm
yeah.
at. Right.
So I moved from there to kind of out there stuff. Really, I did a bit of healing, acupuncture,
Okay, cool.
um, then psychotherapy.
Acupuncture's got a great evidence base these days.
Yeah, yeah,
Sort of really
hypnotherapy.
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, hypnotherapy and psychotherapy.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
or it was a model around hypnotherapy, but it was quite academic from the psychotherapy point of view.
Uh-huh.
And I thought, this is more me. This is more.
Okay.
I have an attitude. I have an agenda. So with counselling, as the counsellor, you're not meant to have an agenda. I definitely will need an agenda. If I'm going to help you, you don't know what you need. You might know what you need, sorry, but you don't know what you want. you don't know what's going to be effective. Sorry, the other way around. You might know what you want, but you don't know what you
I
need.
get it.
Yeah,
You've got a knowledge base. You can apply the knowledge base
yeah,
based upon that evidence and knowledge. Yeah. If you can't, I mean, I do feel like I'm regulated by HCPC from my original training as a drama therapist, and I feel it's incumbent upon me to say to people, you can ask me questions about what are the outcomes, what are the
yeah,
likely outcomes, and I should be able to answer that question, right?
yeah,
I should be, and give people some sense of the timescales. It's not how long does it take? Well, it might take a long time with you, but it might take this amount of time.
yeah.
Here's what the evidence says, and I think that's reasonable requests on people's part. Do you know what I mean?
I think it is all reasonable, and I think the one thing I pride myself on is being very real and very direct and very
Sure,
honest.
sure.
And you've got 30, 40 years of experience, not just the formal training, but my
Yeah,
life experience,
yeah,
my
yeah.
seeing what doesn't work, my fumbling in the beginning and getting it all wrong and not
Mm.
helping people, and you know, having an approach now which is very much quick, brief change, empowerment. I don't want you to be my client. I want you to see me and then not be my client as soon as possible.
Sure.
Um, and I see people in therapy for months and months and years, and I'm thinking that, what is that? What is it doing?
Mm.
How is it helping? Because I want to change. I want to change quick, and I wanted to feel different, and I wanted some structure and strategy that would help me be
Mhm.
resilient going forward to a world that isn't always nice to me.
Mm.
'Cause that's the reality, and I think even more so now. If I was that age now, with all the social media and the 1,000 attitudes I get a day instead of two, I would have found it much, much more difficult.
Yeah.
So the hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, I really enjoyed, and I liked the practice of that. And
Mhm.
within that model, there was a weekend on neuro-linguistic programming, NLP, which is that was the thing that really spoke to me. So I know that evidence-based isn't particularly there for it, but it's something that when I first saw it, I thought this is so simple for me. This is so much, it's not a therapy, but it's a way of understanding people that really spoke to me. And from learning the basics of it to becoming a trainer of it in 3 years, I just went for it really. And
Mm.
I've been training NLP for 20 years. That's the basis of everything I've done.
Okay.
Um, Adapted it into a therapeutic approach, learned from people who've taken it and made it into a therapy. I've learned from a few um, people who've come up through that kind of NLP approach. So David Grove, I don't know if you've heard of David Grove, did
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah. I mean, I know NLP quite well. I'm not a
yeah.
practitioner, but I know it quite well, and I know it's had some very positive benefits
It does
on
if it's
people's
done. If
lives.
it's, I've got to put massive caveats over NLP. There's a lot of really bad NLP out there. There's a lot of manipulation. There's a lot of people who use it to pick up women or to manipulate others and sell hard to
Yeah.
people. And there's some really poor
It's
NLP.
like a lot of unregulated things that can be helpful, but if it's unregulated, it
Yeah,
then you have people who have agendas use it and they're not
yes,
accountable. And that's always a fundamental problem in this field. If
that's
somebody's
it.
not accountable, then there's a problem, isn't there? You know.
Yeah, he's got a big thumbs up
I don't know why that is. It's my camera sometimes picks up on my
there.
I don't know how to turn it off, to be honest.
I mean, that is the issue. So powerful stuff attracts people who like power, and
Yeah,
I do think we've got in the self-help sort of new age, whatever, anything that's
yeah,
not regulated, we've got a lot of narcissists, and we've got a lot of people who like the influence they've got over people and
yeah.
aren't necessarily,
And we've got to look more than just narcissists, actual predators who are in
yeah,
there.
yeah,
They're picking up victims. They're choosing people. They're choosing victims.
yeah,
Particularly sexual predators are there. Sort of particularly blokes who are sexual predators. It's definitely there, right?
totally. And it is something that I mean, I suppose we get that. We get doctor, Harold Shipman was supposed to be a good doctor. We get people in all walks of life, but there's a high amount of people because it's unregulated.
Yeah,
And it is something that I'm concerned about, that the way that people see something that's amazing, really, if it's handled well, if it's produced and trained and regulated as far as it needs to be regulated. I like the freedom of not being regulated, to be
yeah,
fair.
yeah,
I can put a lot more of my personality into my therapy, I think, and I can be slightly more risk-taking in the way that I approach people.
mhm,
I do train a lot of people who are, BACP, etc. A lot
yeah,
of counselors, a lot of therapists who are under those regulations.
Well, they're not yet. We should just be clear about that. The BACP isn't a regulator. It's still just a professional body. It's not
Yeah,
a regulator.
and
So there is
I've
talk about doing that in the broader psychotherapy professions.
yeah.
And I'm not questioning the ethics of BACP. It's just a legal fact. They're not a
Yeah,
regulator.
yeah, and I've had people who haven't been supported when they've needed it from people like BSCP,
Yeah.
and I'm naming them because it was them. That somebody anyway, that's a different story. But it doesn't really. A lot of those things don't really mean anything. I get that. Um, I think it's down to personal ethics and it's down to personal values and it's about me being a safe person, and that's overwhelmingly what people feel
That's
when.
another. We'd have a very long conversation about that. I tend to think regulation is the way to go, just because I'm regulated, and because it just means that if I do something wrong, even though I'm a nice person, if I do something wrong, there's a body for the public to go to, and their job is public protection, not my protection. There's loads of protection for you and me. I've got insurance, I've got solicitors, I've got this and that, and the public need protection. That's the bottom line here. This government is talking about doing that now, which they were going to do before the pandemic, and then no, yada yada yada. So let's hopefully that happens. Moving beyond that, though, into sort of your development and growth. So you're doing the mental health nursing, you move out of that, you move into the prison systems. At some point, you seem to have picked up a family. Where did that happen? where,
Yeah. Well,
where did you fit that in?
I've got so I was married quite young, and I've got two children who are now adults by my first partner, and then my second partner, Jackie, who's now my business partner as well. We met in prison, so I was working in
Right.
a Northallerton prison, and her children, three children, were quite young, so they're my stepchildren now. So I've got five adult children,
You're not
effectively.
the first couple I've met who met in prison.
We
It's
met across a
seriously
prison
not. I mean,
cell.
it's
Yeah.
it's really interesting, sort of how many relationships start in those.
Yeah, so I was managing two prisons, drug and alcohol services, carrot services when they came in.
Yeah,
And I was the psychological program lead. And it was the prison I was in one day a week in Northallerton here. I was in Dearborn in Barnard Castle
yeah,
for four of the days. Yeah, we met in prison and just been together 25 years now.
great.
So, and we have eight
And a
grandchildren.
nice large blended family by the sounds of it, though.
Yeah, eight
I'm sure they'll get on
grandchildren
very well.
keep us busy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
and yeah, so it's been a journey and a life outside of work as well. So it's
yeah.
very much a family orientated. We have a
And I
grand.
think that's really important that people understand this, that because that old medical model is that disconnect between the human and
Yeah,
what the human is doing.
yeah.
And of course that's not correct. It's not the way it is. And it's also it's an inappropriate model because in terms of mental health is not just the absence of illness.
Mhm.
It's something much more than that, which I think we're going to talk about. So you train in NLP. Did you train in anything else?
Yeah, so I've trained in a few things. I
Right.
tend to things I've found training in some things that I didn't find very useful. So I have tr given things a go that I didn't think were particularly useful.
Yeah.
But the two main things that I've trained in, three main things I've trained in, I actually teach now. So there's a therapist called Andrew T. Austin. I don't know if you've come across him.
No.
Similar journey to me, ex-British ex-nurse,
Yeah.
um, unsatisfied with his own treatment when he needed it,
Yeah.
and he's gone off and developed quite a few things. So he came from hypnotherapy, NLP background originally.
Yeah.
He's developed an eye movement therapy called IEMT, Integral Eye Movement Therapy,
Okay.
which is from the same
Similar
mothers,
lines to EMDR type
from the
stuff.
same from the
Yeah.
same grandparents. It says both from NLP. The
Yeah.
two guys that created NLP, one heritage went down to Francine Shapiro and EMDR, and
Yeah.
the other came through Richard Bandler, the other person through Steve Andreas, and then to Andrew Austin.
Yeah.
Um, it is becoming we have a regulatory body for IEMT,
Yeah.
but again, it's not specifically recognised yet by
They've
mainstream.
got to do the research, have the RCTs,
Yeah.
add them to the nice guidelines. I
So
mean,
we're just setting up some research studies at the moment. There are a
right.
couple of things out there. I mean, the results are phenomenal. It's there's no doubt about the effectiveness of
Well,
it.
we know the basis of those, the neurological basis of why they work. So I'm surprised we haven't seen a lot more sort of branchings of it.
Yeah,
So
Yeah,
it's good to see. I mean, it's
yeah,
really welcome, I think, as a practitioner,
yeah.
because EMDR is really, really successful, but it's limited to what it is, and it's great to see new forms. And for people that don't know, it has a very strong neurological basis. It's about how the brain operates in different sections and moving information around the brain while
Yeah.
you're sort of focusing on it. So that was you went that route, and then what else? You said another
So
third
and
training.
the other thing that Andy Austin created after that is something called metaphors of movement,
Oh, wow! I don't
which
know that. Tell me about that.
again, I mean, everything I do is kind of hidden, which is a shame. So metaphors of movement works by when somebody comes along and says, "How are you feeling?
Yeah,
I'm feeling low, and what's that like?" And eventually they might say, "Oh, it's like I'm in a pit of despair,"
right.
and we'd actually draw out the pit. We'd draw out the pit of despair with them in it
Super. Yeah, brilliant.
in all angles. And then there's a lot more to this, obviously, but then we'd help them resolve the problem in the metaphor.
Yeah,
So we'd look at the picture that we've drawn and talk about idioms that are true. So this person's very low, whichever way they turn, they can't get out. They keep trying to go forward and hit a brick wall, etc., etc. So
right.
we'd draw the picture, so then we can both look at the picture from a dissociated point of view,
Yeah,
and then we'll resolve the problem in the picture, and that will change at an unconscious level
so
the way that it,
projection and introjection.
yes,
You're talking to
and
a drama therapist. You don't need to convince me of
it's
these
it's
methodologies.
it's amazing, but it's just
Yeah,
so unknown and niche at the moment, really. And I train that. It's just getting people to understand how that can fit in with the practice and how that can really,
yeah,
really help.
yeah.
So that's amazing stuff. The other
Brilliant.
thing I trained in, I don't train it anymore because the guy who created it is taking it all back in house. But it's something called All Pain to Go. Again, not a very good name for something that's really good. It's a psychological way of switching off physical and emotional pain,
Okay.
fatigue, and some again phenomenal results with things like fibromyalgia and
Yeah,
arthritis. The it works on the thinking amongst physios and other people at the moment is a lot more around the psychological aspect and element of pain,
yeah.
and the lingering pain is traveling the same neural pathways as the physical pain, the emotional pain. So really powerful way of getting the unconscious to switch off. Everything I work in is in the unconscious, switches off the message.
Yeah,
Um,
I've got a pain specialist physio who works with me. It does extraordinary stuff. And he's like talking about this stuff all the time. I mean,
yeah,
really interesting movements in that world.
yeah,
And also the removal of the need for opiate and opioids and all that sort of stuff, which is just, they are dreadful. The consequences of those are appalling. And so
yes.
having, again, more and more of these sort of pain relief, chronic pain relief issues, particularly post-COVID, where people are suffering a lot, so.
Yeah,
Um,
and things like long COVID. So
yeah.
it's similar to the post-viral ME
Yeah,
fibromyalgia.
exactly.
Getting some really good results with that, getting people's
I'm
energy
sure.
levels back.
I'm sure.
Um,
And so are the trials going on around this stuff as well at the
yeah,
moment?
yeah. There's Seaside University. There's a study. There was a
Brilliant.
short study. I think they got because there's a physio works in that area who's
Yeah.
connected to the university. I think they got the go ahead for the longer study on that.
Right.
But again, I'm a little bit
Super.
out of the loop.
And
Yeah,
just for the public who are watching this type of conversation that Alan and I have will tell you the difference between somebody who's legitimate. Like when I say, are the trials going on? And Alan goes, oh, yeah, there's this and there's this and this. Because people who are legitimate in the field are looking for that opportunity. They're
I
not
love it.
hiding away,
Yeah.
sort of writing books and trying to convince you that they're God. They're just sort of sharing the information,
Yeah,
want it scrutinized. They want it turned into manuals that other people can use. Or the sort of process of manualization is something very familiar to you, Alan. And you produce a manual, somebody else tries it, they get the same results. You know that what you've produced is effective, right? It's
yeah,
not just based upon your personality. So that's how you tell when somebody is legit, even outside of the nice guidelines, right? It's amazing work that you're doing, Alan. This is really interesting stuff. I'm so glad that I bumped into you. There's various connections with people who are working for me. I'm going to set you up and get you connected. Um,
yeah.
how much of the psychiatric nursing training is useful as well, do you think? I mean, not current stuff, but
No,
your
no,
how much do you use from your training?
I think probably not much, to be
Okay.
fair. Because the way it was trained then, I'm not sure how it's trained now.
But it's very
The way it was
different
trained
from
then was
audits. Yeah.
very, it was very much about containment,
Okay.
occupation.
Strategies for control and all that
Yeah,
sort of stuff. Yeah. Okay.
the
Yeah.
occupation rather than change.
Yeah.
But this was, the late 80s. It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
As
And
things were
the sort of
changing.
psychosocial approaches, I think you're very familiar with as well.
Yes.
The environments. If you've done the addiction treatment stuff, it's all about psychosocial
Yeah.
environments and how do people change their behavior, how do they change the people they're hanging out with, and all that sort of stuff. So very familiar work. So
Yeah.
tell me about. I'd like to know about specifically about the books that you've written and what motivated them. I happen to have a personal opinion, a prejudice, if you like, that anybody who writes a book is insane, and anybody who writes more than one is really out to lunch, and I don't know why anybody would go to the hassle of writing a book.
Yeah.
But tell me, so the first book was about bullying because of the experience of your kids, is that right?
Yeah, I mean that to be fair, that was it was co-written with a children's forensic psychologist who happened to come on one of my training courses and
Yeah,
said, "Can we write a book together?" And
right.
this was many years ago. It's out of print. The printer office burnt down. There's no copies of it available anymore. So it's something that is out there, and it's just a brief, thin book written for adults working with children under 11. Really, it was aimed at useful for anyone. And some schools bought it in as a policy. So it's about the how do you empower the how do you how do you help the person who feels the need to bully really, but it's more about how do you empower the person to be less bullyable. How do you give children strategies for when somebody's give so my wife does this, she's a therapist with children now. She gives the child strategies. For instance, if someone's verbally calling us names, she just says smile at them congruently and say thank you. And she said it ends. What can they do about that?
Yeah,
If you're not giving them the juice and you're not biting back.
yeah,
So that was one, but the other one is about posture and walking tall and just being less likely to, and as an adult, I've learned that be less
yeah. The
likely to
body
get,
armor is really important.
yeah, the person with the
Absolutely.
with
Without
with
that.
the radar for somebody who can hurt them,
Yeah,
who allow them to hurt them. They're very intuitive. So,
yeah,
being able to empower myself to be less of a target, less attractive to people because
yeah.
I don't look like I could be approached or bullied. And if I am approached and bullied, I've got a strategy that's verbal that gets them to realize I'm not for them. And this is all about empowerment, really,
Yeah.
because I do think we're not as good at empowering people to look after themselves as they could.
Agreed.
I think
Agreed.
we've
We have a
got that.
deficit model rather than asset model.
Yeah,
Agreed.
we've got the awareness, but not the
Yeah.
resilience and the strategy.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. And also, we can be quite unrealistic about what we think things are going to achieve. We're not here to cure people, because you can't really remove an experience. But what you can do is help people move beyond it
Yeah,
into a new sort of modality, if you like, in their life.
yeah. I mean, the IEMT. Sorry,
Yeah, go on, go on.
just I'm kind of going to disagree with you. You can remove an experience impact. So you might
You
even
can
get
remove
that.
the impact. You can't physically remove the structures, but it's new pathways, right?
Yeah, it's. I'm not. I don't think I'm disagreeing with you. What I'm saying
It's
is
just I was having
the
lunch with a mate
amnesia.
yesterday. We were talking about this because she's
Yeah,
got
yeah,
some new trauma therapy, and I was like, "How far did we go?" Go anyone? Come on, tell me. Go on,
yeah.
tell me what went wrong.
And a lot of people get amnesia for
Yeah,
the memory that's so in the process we look for the earliest memory that the feelings attached to.
yeah,
So we look at pre-7 um, imprints where I didn't have logic,
yeah.
um, and we can actually. I mean, again, it's because it's not proven yet. It sounds like I'm talking like it's too good to be true, but it can really. I might. What I think the easiest way to say it is I have an adult perspective from a dissociated point of view,
Yeah,
just like the day we went on holiday when I was 5.
yeah,
I can remember it, but it's got no big emotion for me.
yeah.
But even then, sometimes people can't remember. They come into therapy and amnesia. They can't remember why they came in. It comes back obviously, but it's not got the emotional attack. We dissociate the emotion from
Yeah.
it.
I know, and the current research in EMDR is proving that, to be honest. It is showing that these things may have happened, but to all intents and purposes, they didn't because they're no longer function in the neurological framework because there's a brand
Yes.
new framework that's set up. And that
Yeah.
can happen like that without a doubt. My point is this, that the physical structures are there, they're just be redundant. There's new physical structures that are much more effective. And also, I come from the school of belief, and I think there is more evidence around this, that as a system, when we're put in a facilitative environment, we will navigate towards maximum functionality and towards health. We will navigate towards that given appropriate environments.
Yeah,
Rarely we're given appropriate environments, as you know, but that is there
so
within us, I think, very definitely.
I think so. And I think there's other layers to work with. So
Yeah.
some of the underlying beliefs about self, the helplessness,
Yes. Yeah.
hopelessness, worthlessness
Yeah.
for everyone, imposter syndrome that, I still
Absolutely.
get sometimes. It's like the reality of that we're always work in progress and my life's not amazing, but I've got strategies for dealing with things when I don't like them.
It's also, I think, and I don't know whether you come across it, but I also think sometimes somebody wants a sense of going forwards and somebody wants a sense of going back to something, and that's okay. And I think we're developing more and more range of options around both those choices, and it's sort of very much about how do you want to work on this, and
Yeah,
that's great. It's really exciting, I think, because
yeah,
it used to be we only had one way, which was you had to develop insight and sit quietly and be told what you are by somebody. Now there are much more choices, and the more choices we have, the better.
yeah.
So I sound like a evidence-based Nazi, but that's only because I get really annoyed about how much snake oil sellers there are out there. I'm
And so
actually
and so do
into the
I,
creative
because
approaches.
I and so do I, because I am in that other bracket where
Yeah,
I'm non-nice accredited.
yeah,
Um, but my frustration is with people who are mainstream and will not even be open to the possibility that this
I
stuff in 20
totally
years
agree
will
with
be
you.
the
Yeah,
model.
yeah,
Because are you practicing the way you did 20 years ago, or have you updated your practice? Are
yeah,
you a
exactly,
scientist?
exactly.
You do the experiment first,
Yeah,
or do you suffer from premature evaluation and you
yeah, 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 yeah,
decide
absolutely.
before you've looked at it?
Yeah,
And the frustration for people like me who are ethical and who are good at what we do
yeah.
is that this is not you, but a lot of people will dismiss us out of hand without the possibility that what we're doing can be really, really good.
Absolutely, 100%. I totally agree
I
with you.
only see people who the system's failed. I only see people who've been through EMDR and counselling and CBT and it hasn't worked, and
Yeah,
medication that hasn't worked.
yeah,
So my view is pretty skewed because I do get people
yeah,
that come to me last usually. But it is that when the government, when the army, for instance, are offered free post-traumatic stress treatment that they won't even take up, where people are suffering and dying, I just think some of it is
yeah.
I get very passionate about let's just do what's right instead of doing it right. And
But it
it's
used to be much more like that. You would often find, and my practice, your practice is like this, you would have often found those heads of department that were happy to work in that way and would bring people in on the basis of they want this creative throughput, and were willing to take the risk. You find less people established in the system now who are willing to do that. And
yeah,
that is very sad.
yes.
That
And
is really, yeah,
therapeutic risk. I hear a lot of people, I train a lot of people who are still working in NHS type environments.
yeah,
And my approach scares them so much.
yeah,
I
yeah,
couldn't, I wouldn't dare say that to a client. I wouldn't dare be as that direct, or I wouldn't be allowed to do that.
yeah,
And I understand it because I used to work in it. But
yeah,
one of the reasons I'm not working in is because some of the rules are stupid and
yeah.
some of the restrictions don't make any sense for the client because I'm so
There's a
client.
difference between management of risk and aversion of risk.
Yes,
Management of risk is absolutely correct, but aversion of risk means nothing changes and nothing improves.
that's
Risk
it.
averse lives, you might as well be dead, to be honest. You're not actually living, as you know, which brings us neatly on to how you discovered the trauma work,
Yeah,
because of course, traumatized people become risk averse. That's what it does, you know. So
yeah.
how did you stumble upon it? And we haven't got a huge amount of time. We've got about 3 or 4 minutes to discuss that and then to come up to your current book and what motivated you to write it. Is that okay?
Okay.
Just give you
Yeah,
a
yeah.
heads up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the trauma work, it's just it's come out of working in those environments like prison
Right.
and there's an awareness of the stuff that's lingering in people's history that's making them behave the way they do as an adult is usually from their ACEs and childhood experiences. Um, and when I learned IEMT and that there is a pattern that's specifically around trauma release,
Sure.
which looks
Sure.
for a linchpin, it looks for a small thing that the person did or didn't do, say or say, didn't say. So it works on the fact that my unconscious doesn't know anyone else but me exists.
Yeah.
and it's my responsibility. So I'm feeling guilt, I'm feeling bad, I'm feeling
Yeah.
whatever it is, and it can release the power of the post-traumatic stress. It doesn't mean it's like gone, but it means that it's got no
No,
power over.
and we don't need to get into that again. I
Yeah,
totally get it. And
yeah,
is that pen often a shame-based thing? Because
yeah,
it's often
yeah,
shame
yeah,
is the powerful
yeah.
stuff.
If only I hadn't, I shouldn't have done
Right,
that.
exactly,
I wished I didn't
exactly.
think that. And it can be something really, really simple that often gets overlooked,
Yeah.
and dismissed. Oh, don't worry about that. And
It's not, it's people say it's the ants, it's not the elephants, right? And it's very individual. So people can just pull that, it releases it, and then the system, their system,
yeah,
balances towards health more
it
effectively.
does because it's becomes present rather than past,
Brilliant.
and
I get that
reliving,
totally.
reliving, reliving, reliving. I haven't
And
really remembered.
I mean, it makes sense to me, but you would be using some of the hypnotherapy, which is deep relaxation tools around that. Yeah.
I don't actually. I
No?
don't use any of my hypnotherapy anymore.
Do you
Um,
not? I'm
I'm very,
interested.
very talking, wakeful. Um, it's about coaching more than it's therapy, but it's more psychoeducational coaching,
Yeah. Okay.
changing things, unplugging them at a neurological level rather than at a talking level.
I
Because
don't necessarily make a distinction between therapy and
no,
psychoeducation.
no,
To be honest, it's like most of what I do is psych ed and is
absolutely.
mostly is coaching, to be honest, with people.
As
So
long as there's a strategy. So I think I'll reiterate, and you've said it. If I know, if a client comes to me and lists all their psychological diagnosis, I shudder because it's like, where are you? You're sitting next to me as a therapist here.
exactly.
You need to get into your
Yeah.
shit and feel your feelings, and stop telling, stop trying to tell me your stuff. I'll tell you your stuff. I mean, I will ham it up a bit and just get them to laugh at themselves and go,
Yeah. Yeah.
you
Yeah.
need to start
Yeah.
feeling. You need to get your feelings rather than your words, and I need you in your body and not in your head. And
Brilliant.
changing things at this unconscious pictures, sounds, and feelings in my head, in my body, more than the words I've learned to make meaning of those things. Those things make meaning. I decide that means that, but I can't use the thoughts, the thinking that's got me here to get me out of it.
Yeah.
So
Because that's
reflection on
the
its own
top-down
is,
approach. All
yeah,
right. So I get that. Now, tell me about this book. What's it called and what motivated it? Because
it's
I
called under. Oh, you
can't
can't
see
see
it
it.
because there you go. Now I can see
Yeah,
it. When you put it in front of your face, it's because you're blurring
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Overthunk. It's called Overthunk. Your
Right.
brain is chatting shit to you.
Yeah. My
Choose to.
brain is chatting shit to me all the
Yeah,
time. It has to be
yeah.
true.
I mean, it's. I think it's a 21st century thing more than ever that we've got this overthinking. The logical brain is not our psychological friend. The elephant and the rider. You probably heard the metaphor of the unconscious being like the elephant and the rider being like our logical brain. And the 21st century modern Western person thinks science and thinks their way into and out of things, and they've got this chat going on all the time. Social media has absolutely blasted that and made it much, much more. People have got echo chambers; they can go and listen to the same opinions back. And
Yeah.
the thing that was a transient thought 30 years ago is now something that's embedded in people, and their body's responding like it would because it's doing fight or flight. And I've got no saber-toothed tigers to be frightened of. So now that appointment I've got coming up feels just like that.
Yeah.
And it's how do we tame the brain, the logical brain, because it likes to solve the problems we give it, but it doesn't always have the right strategies for that. It will attempt to think and reason, and that top brain stuff doesn't really help.
Yeah.
This is deep, unconscious stuff that's often started when I was 5 year old, when I didn't really have language, so I can't really talk to you about it.
Mm.
And how do I just learn to let thoughts come in and be okay with them? And actually, one of the things that I talk about is learning to love them. I noticed I'm worried about this podcast, and I love that. I noticed I'm worried about the way people might perceive me, and I love that.
Yeah.
And it's almost like it's got no power, just that simple linguistic shift
Yeah.
to say this is just something that's happening. It's just, I describe it like the ticker tape at the bottom of a news channel. You don't have to read it. And if you do read it, you don't have to do anything about it.
Yeah.
Your brain is literally chatting shit to you all day long
Yeah.
if you listen to it. So it's very humorous. It's very much about practical tools that you can use, stuff I've learned over the years to help me, but also to help other people, help people understand in very simple, so people who are not in this profession,
Can I
very
swap the
simple to
word
them,
simple for straightforward in straightforward,
straightforward. Yeah,
accessible ways?
straightforward, plain English.
Yeah. And
Um,
very accessible language, accessible terms and concepts that you
Yeah.
don't need a PhD to understand, right?
No, and the psychoeducation bits of it are bits that I will talk to a client about in the room, or I'll train my students.
Yeah.
Um, and so it's given enough background of how it works and how we do this stuff, without making it too technical.
Yeah.
And it's got lots of examples of how you can help yourself, really,
Great.
just
Great.
to calm the chatter down.
And there's a lot of, I mean, I know what you're talking about. There's a lot of science in what you're saying. So removing the activation of fear, because we have a predisposition towards fear, which is necessary for survival. But as you say, we don't live in that world anymore where that developed in the
No,
brain. It's not going to go away anytime soon. So we better use it. I've also add a little bit extra. I wonder what you think about this, because I think it's not just top brain, but it's one half of the top brain, which is the left brain. When we shift into more creative, when we get the corpus callosum working and move into the right brain, the more sort of big picture stuff. Yeah, you're nodding away.
and
It is.
that's exactly where especially the metaphors of movement is in pictures. We're going to we don't want the person being logical. We don't want them being in a meta position. We don't want them in the metaphors, in their stories, in their head that they live by, the dreams they run. And when I'm using integral eye movement therapy, we're going left to right. We want the person's left and right brain. This is all about using the best of both. It's about using the creative brain and using the logical brain to.
That's where things like that mindful awareness comes, because you can shift from one hemisphere to the other. There's an interesting book, I think, is it called Master and Commander, which is that type of
I've
image.
not, I don't know that one yet.
There's because there's various ways of thinking of the brain, up and down, but there's also left and right. And
Yeah, I
so
tend to talk more about left and right, but it's more the model I use. And it's not actually written in the book, but it's the linguistic map that we operate from, or the
yeah,
neurological map. And when I start putting meaning, I have to put meaning to things. My logical brain often gives me really unhelpful meanings of things,
yes,
and that it's changing the meaning. And we get so much bombarded in social media. We get so
yeah,
many opinions that we get lost. And unless we know who we are, what we stand for, have our edge and our boundaries and our truths, we can often be moved by other people's stuff, and
brilliant,
we forget ourselves.
brilliant. Great stuff. A lot of similarities. I mean, I'm going to think about. I would like you to come back and we talk more about these
Yeah,
things.
sure.
I particularly would like to talk about sort of this thing about being a guy in today's world and some of the dreadful stuff that's happening and how men need to step up. You seem like to me like a man who's willing to step up. Um,
Absolutely.
so we definitely get into that conversation in the future. For now, we have to finish, I'm afraid, Alan. I'm really sad about that because I could literally go on uh, uh,
Yeah,
like
me
this
too.
for hours, to be honest. So first of all, have you got a website?
Yeah, it's I've got several, but the main one is changeworking.co.uk, which is the overarching company for it's mainly around the training that I do.
Right.
But it's got links to the one-to-one therapy type stuff I do as well. So the changeworking.co.uk is the best to
Change
start with.
working, one word, dot
One
co
word.
UK.
Yeah.
Great. Where's the book available?
The book's available on Amazon. It's
Can you
in
put it in front
ebook.
of your face again so people can see it?
Overthunk. Oh, picking things up with it. It's on Amazon. It's on ebook on Amazon and Kindle. By the time this goes out, should be available too.
Great.
Sorry,
So just find it on
Audible.
Amazon to start off with and then
Kindle's
choose your e-reader.
Audible should be available by the time this goes out. Sorry, that's
So
been. I've recorded it. It's just uploading at the
great.
moment. There's
Listen,
an
thank
lot
you
to
so
go.
much for joining me. Really, real pleasure to have you on, and great to talk to somebody with similar life journeys, to be
Yeah,
honest, and sort of
brilliant.
really interesting stuff. So I'll definitely be bringing you back on. You stay there for now, folks. I hope you've really enjoyed this as much as I have. Get in touch with Alan, have a read of his book. Really practical help available, clearly, and much needed in today's world where we're bombarded with shit all the time. Like really are. So
Yeah.
anything that help clear through that nonsense is really welcome. So bye bye for now, folks, and I shall see you at the next episode of the Wellbeing Show.